News 2 digs deeper into the medical marijuana debate all day today in every newscast. New at 10, there is a law on the books in Tennessee which allows seizure patients to use cannabis oil, an extract from the cannabis plant for medical purposes. It took a grassroots effort from several groups and individuals to get that bill passed, but advocates say more needs to be done. News 2's Larry Flowers explains.
So this is the CBD oil. So we just ordered these, on the web from this CW Botanicals in Colorado.
Brentwood resident Timothy Voges' son Aiden has been having seizures since he was 4 weeks old. He's been on 18 different medications and has had several surgeries.
I've seen it benefit him when nothing else would. And we're just going to do oil, okay, buddy?
Aiden has been using cannabis oil for 2.5 years. His mom freezes the oil in capsules.
In the first year, being on the cannabis oil, no other change in his medications at all. His seizures were cut in half. In the second year, just this past year, he had a 9-month stretch where he had 0 seizures total, none.
And it's still illegal, but it's not illegal in every state.
Paul Kuhn has been involved in grassroots efforts on marijuana law reform since 1971, 47 years and counting.
I became upset when I realized that we had not been told the truth about marijuana. And I really discovered that when I got out of the Navy, and I was perturbed that the government that I served and to which I pledged my allegiance was misinforming the public on marijuana.
Then it became personal. 21 years ago, his late wife Jeannie was battling cancer. She used marijuana for relief after undergoing chemo treatment.
And the legal drugs just failed completely to stop that awful nausea that comes with chemotherapy, and a puff of marijuana and it just disappeared immediately.
Kuhn's name was on a bill before state lawmakers, the Kooser-Kuhn Medical Cannabis Act. The bill would have authorized prescription sales of marijuana for medical purposes. It failed to make it out of committee.
80% of Tennessee voters support medical marijuana, but boy, it's not 80% of the state legislature.
There's the bill signing with the governor.
Voges was instrumental in helping to legalize the use of cannabis oil for limited medical use for seizure patients only. Governor Haslam signed the bill into law in 2015.
It's really about, families trying to help kids, people trying to help people with very serious health conditions, right, that otherwise aren't finding relief.
Aiden hasn't seen any side effects from using the cannabis oil. His dad says it's been a lifesaver. But get this, even the dosage of all of his other medications has also been reduced. Larry Flowers, News 2.
Welcome to the Tennessee Crossroads, I-40, 65, and 24, a hub for marijuana transport across the southeast. But is change coming down the road by way of medical marijuana? Law enforcement is split.
I think it's time to move in that direction.
Well, it creates a whole other set of issues.
Chief Anthony Hevner with Portland Police comes across cannabis on a daily basis.
It's almost as prevalent as alcohol in most cases.
In Colorado, you'll see marijuana out in the open. In Portland, it's packed away in evidence envelopes as the charged await court.
Medical marijuana kind of opens up a whole new can of worms.
The DEA labels marijuana the most available and commonly used illicit drug in the U.S. Analysis by the ACLU finds that 52% of all drug arrests in 2010 were for marijuana. Numbers too high for Sheriff Darren Hall.
People's lives are totally ruined by an arrest of a small amount of marijuana in the back of a car. Young people can never get jobs. I don't really think we need to be building jail cells and ruining lives over the small use of marijuana.
The medical marijuana divide in law enforcement is stark. While some view it as a partial remedy for opioid abuse, others see possibly Tennessee's next crutch.
It's become probably the #1 problem in the United States we're facing today is opioid abuse. Is marijuana going to be next? Everybody's heard the term gateway drug, and I firmly believe that it is.
Plus, it remains a Schedule I drug, legal in many states, illegal on the federal level.
It's confusing. We've been, my entire career, which is almost 30 years, marijuana is a Schedule I drug, federally scheduled. And, we've always, taken an aggressive approach about any person in possession of drugs.
For many in law enforcement, it's a matter of precedent. Legalize this form of medical marijuana, and it's tough to reverse the movement's momentum. But Sheriff Hall hopes instead for comprehensive discussion as the debate rolls on.
Let's get out of the politics of Democrats, Republicans, and all the holier-than-thou attitude. We need to have that conversation nationwide.
Adam Snyder, News 2.
They're starting to grow wild a little bit.
On this 40 acres in Clarksville,
We grew 15 million plants last year.
Andrew Fox and his wife grow industrial hemp,
We're state licensed as both growers and processors.
low THC cannabis plants to manufacture cannabis oil for patients and more than 20 stores.
We ship to all 50 states. We ship daily to Colorado and California even.
The couple launched Veteran Grown, their company, 3 years ago. It's now one of about 80 growers for the state of Tennessee.
Regardless of how you think of it, we're in the business of selling health.
Both combat veterans, Fox's wife suffered an injury requiring back surgeries and various pain meds. The couple went to Colorado, where she got medical marijuana, which she says completely alleviated her back pain. The Foxes wanted to bring a form of that to Middle Tennessee, especially to veterans and to their families.
The biggest things that are bothering our veterans are PTSD, anxiety, and chronic pain. Medical marijuana, although the DEA and FDA claims there's no medicinal value, can have huge benefits. You know, if you look at the research done by third parties, helps tremendously.
While several states in the U.S. have approved marijuana for medical or recreational use, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs says federal law still classifies marijuana and all derived products as a Schedule I controlled substance. That makes it illegal in the eyes of the federal government, and it means VA healthcare providers cannot recommend it or assist veterans in getting it. Rolled out in December, though, a new VA policy encourages VA doctors to talk about medical marijuana with military veterans as part of comprehensive care planning and to adjust treatment plans.
For there just to be another option or opportunity for them to bring up to veterans is definitely going in the right direction.
The department does say that a veteran taking part in a state medical marijuana program will not have their eligibility for VA care and services affected, but veterans cannot use or possess marijuana on the grounds of VA medical centers, and the VA will not pay for medical marijuana prescriptions.
We just ask for citizens in America to have the right to use what they feel benefits them the most. It's their own choice and own decision.
News 2's Haley Wilgus explores the different forms of cannabis, including some that is legally grown here in Middle Tennessee.
On this 500-acre farm in Franklin, a budding business. 4 years ago, Joshua Camp decided to parlay his career in media technology and marketing into growing and manufacturing products derived from industrial hemp, and thus the company Lab Canna was born.
We've got another 5 to 10 years of explosive growth in the industry of cannabis altogether.
Although they're both cannabis plants, industrial hemp is not the same as marijuana.
Industrial hemp has less than 0.3% THC. It has no psychoactive effect. It won't get you high.
Hemp is one of the oldest domesticated crops and is used in hundreds of products, including building materials, renewable plastics, food, and fuel. It also has high levels of cannabidiol, or CBD. It's a chemical compound that acts on cell receptors and alters neurotransmitter release in the brain.
The calls that I get are typically, inflammation, children with epilepsy, a lot of folks with Crohn's disease or MS.
Studies have shown CBD to have a positive effect on people with those conditions. Although those claims have not been substantiated by the FDA, Camp says his customers report feeling better after taking this Tennessee CBD oil produced by Lab Canna and sold in more than 60 retail stores, including here at Urban Market in Franklin.
CBD oil with no THC is legal in Tennessee. In January, 2 Republican state lawmakers introduced a bill to legalize oil-based medical marijuana products. It would not allow for raw cannabis, but these pills or lotions would contain THC, the mind-altering compound which produces a euphoric high.
I'm an addiction psychiatrist, so I'm by definition quite leery about medications that make people feel better without necessarily treating a problem.
That's how Dr. Peter Martin describes the function of medical marijuana. He says it doesn't stop pain, but rather changes how your brain perceives it.
You may say, well, you know, I know the pain is there, but it's not bothering me.
Dr. Martin is a professor of psychiatry, behavioral sciences, and pharmacology at Vanderbilt University School of Medicine. He says marijuana changes the firing rates of nerve cells in the brain.
So that affects the way your brain learns. And it affects the way your brain perceives the world around it.
While Dr. Martin worries about medical marijuana's effects on the brain, CAMP sees the positives.
We're very optimistic. We're going to keep pushing forward regardless of what the laws look like.
Haley Wilgus, News 2.
So all day today, we are diving into the debate over medical marijuana in Tennessee. Supporters say it could be a driving force for the economy, creating jobs and providing the state millions of dollars in tax revenues. Our Washington correspondent Drew Petromo finds that in states where it is legal, cannabis businesses face a slew of hurdles.
In 1982, Congress passed an amendment to federal tax code in response to a case involving a Minnesota drug dealer.
Filed for a bunch of business deductions for his cocaine, methamphetamine, marijuana business.
The IRS denied the deductions, but the drug dealer went to court and won. Congress responded by adding Section 280E to the tax code.
That essentially says if you traffic in a Schedule I or Schedule II controlled substance that's illegal under state or federal law, you may not take any standard business deductions outside of the true cost of goods sold.
Larger container.
Fast forward 35 years, and 29 states plus the District of Columbia have legalized marijuana for some users. Jeffrey Kahn is a 65-year-old rabbi who owns the Tacoma Wellness Center in D.C. He got in the medical marijuana business after watching his father-in-law suffer for decades with multiple sclerosis.
It made a huge difference for him. It helped with muscle spasms, it helped with neuropathic pain.
But after 5 years in the business, Kahn says it hasn't been the cash cow many people assume.
It's really complicated, and I must say we haven't quite mastered the turn the profit part yet.
Kahn says one of the major obstacles is tax code 280E.
Rent and employees' salaries and everything else that the average business is able to take off their taxes, we can't.
Industry experts say 280E hits marijuana businesses with tax rates that can be double what other businesses pay. But efforts to create an exemption have stalled in Congress.
Right now, the science doesn't show what people are saying.
Tennessee Congressman and candidate for governor Diane Black opposes loosening marijuana laws at the federal or state level until she sees more evidence of its effectiveness as a drug.
This is not something that we ought to do in the state of Tennessee.
And until there's change, the decades-old law will continue to make business tough for those trying to turn one kind of green into another. In Washington, I'm Drew Petromo.
There are bipartisan bills in both the House and Senate to end the high tax rates for marijuana businesses, but so far hearings on the bills have not been scheduled.
Welcome back to News 2 at 5. All day long, News 2 has been looking into the medical marijuana debate. It's an issue that state lawmakers will discuss this year.
Lawmakers are proposing a bill that would allow patients to use oil-based forms of the plant. Our state Capitol Newsroom reporter Chris Bungard explains.
On Tennessee's Capitol Hill, you always hear about the devil in the details for most any bill. But for supporters of medical cannabis, there's angels in the 73 pages of this bill.
Its very name, the Medical Cannabis Only Act, is designed to remind people the bill isn't about legalizing marijuana or smoking it to feel better.
This is not joints available to every teenager and adult in the state.
Anesthesiologist Steve Dickerson doubles as a state senator, sponsoring what he calls a narrowly written medical cannabis bill.
To be made available to the sickest Tennesseans who have illnesses that have been identified by healthcare providers who we think would then get benefit from the utilization of cannabis.
The bill spells out using cannabis oil-based products only. They could come in forms like pills, patches, and ointments, the kind of things that say medical, not recreational.
This is a medical bill.
Beginning with cancer, the bill lists nearly a dozen diseases that would qualify for medical cannabis use, but special requests would be considered by a state medical cannabis commission.
We don't want this to be so wide open that anybody could claim to have an illness and it would qualify. We want to have this so there's a check and a balance built into it, so that you have to get to a certain threshold of scientific evidence before an illness could be considered. On the other hand, we don't want the commission stacked with opponents to this who would then never allow us to expand this if the scientific data warrants it.
The Tennessee Medical Cannabis Commission would regulate the process. The commission would be people like doctors, pharmacists, law enforcement, educators, and patient advocates. They would decide who would get a trackable card to obtain medical cannabis and where the product could be bought from a licensed dispensary, along with doses allowed. The bill is 73 pages of conditions, all subject to change as lawmakers begin debate.
I guarantee you, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to have some very vigorous debate on this bill. There are going to be some very passionate advocates, and there are going to be some equally passionate opponents. And at the end of the day, what I want is a better piece of legislation that will better serve the state of Tennessee.
Among those watching will be tens of thousands of patients waiting to see if they can use a cannabis oil-based product in Tennessee. Reporting from the state capitol, Chris Bungard, News 2.
The candidates' views of legalizing medical marijuana could be a deciding factor for some voters out there.
Here's where they stand. Republican Diane Black opposes it, saying marijuana is a gateway drug. Bill Lee and Randy Boyd are non-committal, wanting testing and input from law enforcement and the medical community.
On the other side, we're not on the other side yet, but Republican Beth Harwell is open to the idea, while Democrats Carl Dean and Craig Fitzhugh both support medical marijuana with conditions.
As Bob Mueller found, politics play a big role in the fate of medical marijuana.
If it was just a matter of what voters want, medical marijuana would already be legal in Tennessee. A 2018 Quinnipiac University poll showed 91% support for allowing adults to legally use marijuana for medical purposes. A 2017 Prevention Magazine survey found 75% of those asked believe medical marijuana should be legal. Even a poll from Tennesseans for Conservative Actions showed 52% approval.
This is a popular item. Tennesseans, probably close to 60%, want it approved for medical use.
But there are patients who have benefited from medical marijuana.
There's no doubt in my mind cannabis works in some medical situations.
But it's not as simple as patient testimony and poll numbers.
My position's still the same. I would not vote for medical marijuana.
The politics of medical marijuana are complicated.
I'm concerned about how marijuana can get people over to other type drugs.
Testing of marijuana for medical use is limited at best.
And we have no analytical research because it's still a Schedule I, and we don't have drug companies that are looking at this.
The question is, when you approve something, when I as a legislator vote to approve something, I've got to know it's 99.99% safe. And I don't know that today.
Marijuana also carries with it a stigma. It's linked to the drug culture of the 60s.
In my opinion, it's a gateway drug to other drugs.
On the positive side, marijuana prescribed to relieve pain could help lessen the use of highly addictive opioids that have led to a nationwide opioid abuse epidemic.
It is a plus. I mean, I see a lot of positive to cannabis as an alternative to opioids and as an alternative to pain and nausea and inflammation and all these indications from injuries, say, brain injuries and spinal injuries.
But the lack of testing to prove effectiveness, to determine correct dosages, to determine exactly which patients would benefit, those questions remain unanswered.
That's what we're wrestling with. A lot of legislators are like me. They want to do something, but we don't want to do a little bit of good and long-term hurt.
And there is a fear by opponents that once the door is open to medical marijuana, it also opens the door to legalizing marijuana for recreational use. So the debate over legalizing medical marijuana in Tennessee continues. Bob Mueller, News 2. The growing debate over medical marijuana.
And it's still illegal, but it's not illegal in every state.
Tonight, News 2 takes a closer look at efforts to legalize it in Tennessee.
I've seen it benefit him when nothing else would.
What's standing in the way?
I guarantee you, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to have some very vigorous debate on this bill.
Who are the stakeholders?
The biggest things that are bothering our veterans are PTSD, anxiety, and chronic pain.
Everybody's heard the term gateway drug, and I firmly believe that it is.
And how will the politics of pot play out this year?
That's what we're wrestling with. A lot of legislators are like me. They want to do something.
And welcome back to our live town hall meeting, the medical marijuana debate here in Tennessee. We'll be broadcasting live here on News 2 until 6:30. Then our debate continues and our discussion continues live at WKRN.com and on our Facebook page. We appreciate your interest in taking part in this. Representative Faison, you're the House sponsor of the bill.
Over 2/3 of the population of America have access to cannabis right now, legal access in their states to this plant. That's something that we in Tennessee have to take and realize is a reality. And the thought that 2/3 is going to shrink and less people are going to have access to it, it's not going to happen.
Marijuana is a Schedule I drug. It is a serious felony on the federal level, and folks who are prosecuted and convicted on the federal level serve serious time in prison. Now, many of us here on this panel believe that this should be a states' rights issue.